Microtransactions have been an issue in gaming for quite a while, and I wanted to talk today about what I've discovered while researching the history of microtransactions and where they really started. I mean, you have between just like the basic, time skippers and stuff on mobile games, all the way to season passes, paying to play online on all modern consoles. They're all different forms of microtransactions that are just there to get more money out of you, and sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's not. So we're going to start back at the beginning, the earliest examples that I can find, and work our way up until modern day. And yes, I'm wearing the hat for this one. It is like super hot in this room. I also have a fan going underneath the desk. I really hope that the mic is not picking up. I don't think you guys want to stare at my sweat-covered face. The hat kind of helps distract from that. Starting back in 1999, EverQuest basically set the standard for MMOs. It is, as far as I can find, the first ever MMO to implement a plan where you have to pay monthly in order to play the game, which eventually was adapted by Warcraft in 2004, and most MMOs after that. I know a lot of MMOs don't do that. One of my favorite games, TERA, actually doesn't. TERA is free. You don't have to buy it the first time. You don't have to pay for monthly. But they have their own microtransactions that you're going to see in a lot of the other games coming up as well. I would like to say on a personal note, I refuse to play games like EverQuest, games like World of Warcraft. I personally cannot justify paying monthly for a game that I might not get my money's worth out of. Like, I can't sit there and play the same game for a month straight. And that's what I would feel like I would have to do to justify that purchase. With most games, you're paying $60 or less for the game itself, and then it's yours to keep. You don't have to worry about, am I going to get my value's worth out of it as much, because it's yours forever. You paid it once, and 10 years down the line, you can go back and play that game again. Games like EverQuest and World of Warcraft, you pay for every month, and by the end of the month, if you hardly touch the game, then you were just throwing your money away. So back in 2001, a children's game known as Habbo Hotel released from a Finnish company, I believe, named Sulake, Sulake, that let you customize your character's clothing, so all cosmetics, by purchasing in-game currency known as diamonds. To be fair, there were a lot that you could buy with credits that you actually earned in-game, either by doing specific achievements in the game or simply by playing. But some of the cosmetic items were a little expensive, and I believe some of them you could only pay with diamonds, which cost you actual money. This is the first example that I could find of a game where you had to actually pay money from real life in order to get in-game cosmetics. Now, skipping forward to 2002, I actually did not know this. 2002 is when Xbox released the Xbox Live Gold platform, which you would pay $50 a month in order to play your games online. Back then, it made a bit more sense than it does today, and we'll get into that later. I was always under the assumption that Sony actually started doing it first. They didn't come into play until way later. With this 2002 release, we're looking at the original Xbox. So, believe it or not, as much as we all hate loot boxes, and I know there's a love-hate relationship there, in my opinion, some games do it right. Games like Overwatch, where the items are purely cosmetic, and you can pay for them, or you can earn them, and they're easy to earn. All you have to do is level up, which is pretty simple. You do that just by playing the game. Back in 2004 is the earliest known example of a loot box in the game MapleStory, where you could pay for items known as Gachapon tickets in order to purchase different items. Now, the items were always random. You wouldn't know what you would get, so it could be super rare, or it could be super common. One ticket costs 100 yen, which is about $1 by today's currency. I'm sure back then it might have been a little bit more. So then we get into the infamous 2006 Oblivion horse armor incident, when Bethesda decided to test the waters. Now, they have come out and admitted this is what they were doing. They were trying to see how people would feel about DLC. So they released a horse armor pack, which I believe was only 2 different types of armor that would apply to the horses in the game that served no purpose. They looked neat, but they weren't needed. It was just purely cosmetic. At the time, they had major backlash. It was relatively unheard of. This is the first big AAA game to go out of their way to charge, $2.50 for an in-game, item that people would always assume would just be part of a free update or just a part of the game. But that's not what it was. It was something they created afterwards, and are asking $2.50 for it. People at the time were outraged, and I cannot entirely blame them. But by today's standards, I would love to go back to a time where you could just pay $2.50, or maybe less or more, for cosmetic items that aren't random, aren't in a loot box. And I mean, isn't that relatively common by today's standards? Just paying a little bit of money for cosmetic items? Now, of course, despite all of the backlash, Bethesda actually did make quite a bit of money off of it. It ended up being one of the most sold DLC for the game itself. And I don't know, I feel like even with all the backlash, like, those were just the most outspoken people. It was the minority, possibly the majority, that were being that vocal. But a lot of people didn't really care. It was $2.50, and they played enough Oblivion, they're like, I want my horses to look cool. It's a single player game, and it was just, it didn't hurt to purchase it. So I feel like Bethesda still kind of proved that DLC worked despite all of the fan outrage. So in that same year, a Chinese MMO known as ZT Online was very popular. So they ended up introducing something very similar to MapleStory, which is their own version of loot box. They were called treasure chests. Pretty simple. They were a literal loot box. Unlike a MapleStory where they called it a ticket, and it felt like you were basically entering into a lottery, this felt like you were, just getting a chest full of items. And it did really well. I believe there was probably some backlash around the incident. I don't know. I didn't play it. I'm not Chinese. It was probably the earliest example of a literal loot box. While MapleStory did do a similar thing, you can get a rare item by purchasing what is basically a lottery ticket. This is a literal box with multiple items inside of it, inside of another large MMO. So skipping ahead 4 years to 2010, Facebook's Farmville game ended up seeing a total of 83 million monthly users at its peak. That game was what I would have to describe as one of the earliest pay-to-win models. Now, technically, no, you were not getting major advancements by paying for this game. What you were getting were time skips. It was a very early example of how you could pay money in order to make things go by faster, simply due to the way the game was designed. If you want to plant these crops, it's going to take 4 hours. Or you can pay $4, I don't know how much it actually was, and it would skip that for you. So if you wanted to have a giant luscious farm your first day on the game, that was possible. You just needed a big bank account. So in 2010, Valve, the creators of Team Fortress 2, decided it would be a good time to try out the loot box system for themselves. The game used to be a paid-to-play game. They went free in exchange for introducing the loot box system. You would basically be able to earn chests in game, and you would have to buy keys in order to unlock those chests. So it was kind of a way of making players say, hey, here's this box full of rare things, but even though you have it, you can't open it unless you pay us. I get it, it's popular, people actually somewhat enjoy that system. I don't know why. I feel like it's a terrible way of doing it. Either way, it really worked out for Valve. Their player base for that game multiplied by 12 times the amount of players within the first year of making the game go free to play with loot boxes. It's also the first known example of a company in the West picking up the idea of loot boxes, something that at the time was primarily an Eastern idea. Another one in 2010, and something that I am not even really going to go into, FIFA ended up introducing their new game mode, which is the Ultimate Team, where you could unlock players and build a team, and I hate it. I don't do sports games, and I think this is the worst thing to plague them. The idea that you're having to pay all of this money to unlock these super rare characters, most of the time not even getting the ones that you want. They've been using this model ever since 2010, and it's only gotten worse and worse how much you're paying to get awful characters, hoping, just praying that you're going to get that one really good one. And because you bought the most loot boxes, you bought enough that you end up getting these rare characters, you're going to decimate other players playing online who just paid the $60 for the game and didn't want to double, triple that amount in order to get these rare players. It's awful. I feel really bad for any sports game players. I don't do it myself, but I can see the appeal. I feel really bad for them because it is just terrible. I think that's all we're going to say on sports games for this video. It is one of the worst practices in gaming is any kind of sports game for the most part. It's awful. It's all just for the money. So despite Xbox releasing the Xbox Live Gold back in 2002, Sony didn't pick it up until 2010, a good 8 years later, when they released PlayStation Plus. It was the same price as Xbox. The Xbox's price had not gone up. It was still $49.99 a month in order to play games online. To be fair, you got bonuses with PlayStation Plus, and some games, mostly free-to-play games, were still free to play online, even if you didn't have PlayStation Plus. You got certain benefits. You get more benefits today than you did back then, but you could still get certain games for free. You could still try. They do like an hour-long demo, which is kind of interesting. Kind of like how on Steam you can play a game for 2 hours and then refund it if you don't enjoy it. It was very similar to that. I don't know if they still do that to this day. I don't have a PS4. So let's move on to 2011 with the game APB Reloaded. As far as I am concerned, this game was a colossal failure. It wasn't doing that well in numbers before, so they ended up making the game free to play, and they introduced all of these crazy microtransactions, making the game entirely pay to win. You could pay for these just overpowered items, and they ended up introducing this thing called premium mode, where you would pay a set amount each month in order to get major boosts. It would boost things like your health, your speed, your damage, which is ridiculous. Not only that, but it would cost you it was a bit over $80 a year for premium mode. You were paying more to play one game with this premium mode than you were paying to play PlayStation Online for a year, Xbox Online for a year, or even by today's standards, the Nintendo Switch Online. You would have to pay for, I think, 4 years on Nintendo Switch Online to equal the price of playing APB Reloaded at the premium cost. It was awful. Anybody who didn't pay for the game quit, because there was no way of winning, anything. You couldn't defeat other players because they were paying for all these crazy stat boosts, all of these crazy items. I personally tried out the game a while back. I like looking into these free-to-play games. It was awful. If you're not paying for it, you get the bare minimum. You get here's a very basic weapon. Here are plain white clothing. I don't know why anybody would ever play that game. I don't even know if it's still around. I certainly hope not. So also in 2011, the same incident with APB Reloaded, we got our first ever season pass. It was for the game LA Noire, and the pass was known as the Rockstar Pass. Back then they weren't known as season passes. Didn't take long before that name took hold. The idea, and it's still true to this day, is that the company's basically telling you, hey, we're going to be releasing DLC for this game. You don't know what yet. We might not even know what yet. But if you pay for this, you get it all for free. What happens if the game flops? What happens if making DLC for the game doesn't look like a good financial idea? You're kind of screwed. Then, of course, it didn't take long for other companies to look at this and say, this is a good idea. We can make money off of this. So Mortal Kombat, the 2011 version, which was just called Mortal Kombat, nothing afterwards, I hate these terrible naming schemes, did the same thing. They released a season pass. They actually called it by a season pass. Same thing as the Rockstar Pass, you didn't know exactly what you were going to get. Moving on to 2012, EA set yet another record that is not necessarily a favorable one to set. They released Mass Effect 3, which was the first game ever, as far as I can find, and as far as what the internet was telling me, to feature loot boxes in the game at release. They didn't come as a part of an update. They didn't release them later after baiting players in. If you bought the console version, it was on the disc. All the items that are in the loot boxes are on the disc. But you're paying money in order to unlock them. It's awful. I hate it. I have the same issue with most DLC. If your DLC is made after the game releases, you make a whole game and you release that. Then you work on DLC and release that later. I don't have a major problem with it. It's when you make content for the game then you wall it off behind a paywall, even though it's on the disc that you bought, or it's in the download that you paid for. I find it as just a complete waste. You're paying for the game. You should get everything that was made specifically for that game prior to release. DLC should be an after thing, after the game's doing well, after people are already into it, after they've played everything that you made up until that point that was supposed to make up the game. I know I'm kind of ranting here. It's just, I hate it. It's terrible. In 2014, we saw the release of Dungeon Keeper, which is a game that I would love to get into, but I'm not rich. Once again, like a lot of mobile games like Farmville, you had time skippers. In this game, you would have a dungeon that you're creating, and you would have to clear out blocks in order to get a single square unlocked. These squares could take a couple hours to become freed, which means that you would have to sit there and wait. Maybe go watch a movie or two, waiting for this to become unlocked. Some of them are so bad, you would wait up to 24 hours just to unlock a single square in your dungeon. They got so bad that the British Advertising Standards Authority, oddly long name, actually claimed that EA was misleading by calling the game free. It was so bad that, yes, the game was technically free. You could download it for free. That the British Advertising Standards Authority had to come out and say, this isn't actually free, even though it technically was. In 2015, we saw the release of Clash of Clans, which very, very well proved how much money you can make off of freemium mobile games. Mobile games are already big. You could already make a lot of money off of these mobile games. And there's a reason I haven't really gone into it too much, is I'm not a big mobile game person. I know some of you out there probably are, but there are too many examples of mobile games to go over, so I really had to mention Clash of Clans. Their freemium model got so many people hooked on this game, so many people literally addicted to this game, that according to Business Insider, they were earning $1.4 million a day. People were paying that much money, $1.5 million a day from their player base. There's a reason that I avoided that game, and I am still yet to play it to this day, because I don't think I have an addictive personality. I don't think I'll ever actually spend money on it myself. And people do claim that you can play the game without spending money on it and still have a good time with it. The issue is the sheer amount of players that can't do that, that spend this ridiculous amount of money on it and go broke because of it. I'm not going to go into, is it their fault? Is it the company's fault? That's a whole different argument I'm not going to delve into. Either way, I don't want to support a game like that. Let's move on. So in 2016, Blizzard's Overwatch introduced loot boxes. And like I said before, I think this is the best implementation we have really seen of a loot box. And yes, I do play a fair amount of Overwatch. I haven't played it much at all over the last half year, but any game that makes it purely cosmetic and easy to unlock. The loot boxes are stupid simple to unlock, but you can pay for them if you want to. I like that model. It's all cosmetic. It gives you no benefits to the game, so it's not pay to win. And honestly, if you're just trying to unlock these skins and stuff, it's a lot more fun to grind and try and unlock these, rather than just paying for them. Obviously, because you want to play the game. If you actually play Overwatch enough that you would want to spend money to unlock these cosmetics, then you play it enough that you already have the cosmetics that you want. I don't see many people spending money on these, although I'm sure there are still addicts out there that'll drop $100 on it because there's an event and they just feel like it. I don't know. So on March 3rd, 2017, the Nintendo Switch was released. However, Nintendo opted to wait until September of 2018 to start charging to play online. So now that we have all three consoles out of the way, I do want to talk about it. First off, I do appreciate Nintendo Switch has certain games that are still free to play online. At first they only announced Fortnite, but there are still others that do it as well. It's also only $20, less than half of what you are paying to play online for Xbox or PlayStation. It's $20 a year. I don't think it's that bad. Here is what I hate about paying to play online on all three of these major consoles. Why? You're not the one hosting the server. Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, They are not hosting the servers. If I'm playing Pokemon on my Switch and I'm playing online, it's doing it through the Pokemon Company's servers. I'm sure that some of these games Nintendo hosts the servers for. Some Sony might, some Microsoft might. The majority are going to be hosted by the game developer themselves. You are paying Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony so that way you can use another company's server. To be fair, all three of them do have account logins. They do have to manage your profile, they have to manage what games you have purchased online. On Xbox and PlayStation, they have to manage your trophies and your achievements. They have to, you have voice chat, which Nintendo's is a joke because you have to do it from your phone. They have, messaging. Fair enough. These are all things that Discord does for free. You can pay for Discord. You get bonuses. You don't have to. And the same with Microsoft, the same with Sony. You get bonuses for paying, but you shouldn't have to. People have made I hate to call it an excuse, but it basically is. They've tried to say that, you're paying for this service because they cost them money to keep the servers online. That is true. Do you know how they make their money? By selling games, by selling the consoles. They make money off of the games that other developers make. They get a pretty fair-sized cut. Whereas when you play games on, PC, sites like Steam, GOG, you don't have to pay to play online because they're not hosting the server. They understand that. The service is free. They make their money off of the cut from selling the individual games. I hate that marketing strategy. It's awful. If I want to play Halo with my friends, I can go back there on my Xbox and pay $50 and then boot up Halo. Or now that it's on PC, I can just launch it on Steam. I don't have to pay for it. It's there. It's not using Microsoft servers on either platform. Yet I have to pay for it on my Xbox, but not on my computer, for the exact same game. I get it. If you're playing on console, it's your only option. I cannot fault you for paying for it. And people might say that the free games are worth it. For to some people, the free games are. People like me, not so much. You're still paying a fair amount of money to get these free games. Yes, the value of the games might be much higher than what you're paying, but you're not going to like all of the games. You're going to be getting games that you're going to be like, why would I play this? Microsoft, especially, I don't know about Sony, Microsoft likes to re-release games for the 360, and you get those for free. And some of them are just old games I've never heard of and have no reason to really want to play. You get sports games and racing games, two genres that I am personally not into. Some racing games are fun. The bonuses, personally do not think outweigh the price of them saying, hey, pay us money and you can use somebody else's servers. I think it's stupid. I need to stop rambling. Let's move on. So in 2017, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor had major flash when the game released. For those of you who know about the incident, then you definitely know what I'm talking about. Shadow of Mordor is an offline single-player game. You play it alone, by yourself. It's an RPG kind of game, like games like Skyrim. And they added loot boxes. 4, to be exact. And every loot box would cost more money than the previous one. So if you want the most expensive loot box, you can get the best gear out of it. If you want the cheapest loot box, you're not going to get pretty much anything of value. There was no point in paying for the cheaper ones. At the very least, what they could have done is made it to where all of them had the exact same item pool, but the higher you're paid was either more items that you would get, or they would increase the odds of the more rare items. That would have made it just a little bit better. Either way, you're paying for loot boxes for items that are already in the game. You're paying actual currency for it for an offline solo game. It was pay to win and loot boxes in a game that was meant for a single person to sit down and enjoy. Due to all of the feedback, Monolith Entertainment, the creators of Shadow of Mordor, ended up removing them. And that should have been done a long time ago. That shouldn't have been a part of the game. They were trying to pull an EA. They were trying to milk it for all that it had. They're already paying $60 for the game. If you want more than the $60 that you're already getting for the game, understand the developer doesn't get all of the money. They don't get all of it. Again, the console seller gets a portion. They have to spend money for, the discs to be made, the cases to be made. That's another reason why these developers love doing things on PC, because they don't have to pay all those extra fees. They get more of the money out of it. But if they want more than the money, than what they are initially getting from the cost of the game, that's where you introduce a DLC down the line. You introduce possibly cosmetic items that they can pay for. Not randomized, not just complete random crap from a loot box, but they can see what they're getting. I wouldn't mind that, because I probably wouldn't even buy them unless I was super into the game. Maybe I could drop $5 on it, and that would be an extra $5 straight into their pockets. It's just, why did they think that was a good idea? I don't understand. So also in 2017, we had another major loot box issue. Battlefront 2, a game that was hopefully going to save their idea of remaking the old great Star Wars Battlefront games, kind of flopped down on its face. The game was so oriented around the items that you get from the loot boxes, it was almost impossible to play without buying them. Now, there are going to be people who are like, well, I never bought them and I enjoyed the game. Good. That is a good thing. If you got super into the game, you're playing it every day, you're going to notice people have a lot better stuff than you, and even items that you couldn't get unless you paid for these loot boxes. The game was entirely designed around them. It was hard for you to gain things by yourself. Loot boxes were the way to earn items, to earn, different characters that you could unlock. They got ridiculous feedback over it, and it got so bad that when an EA developer went on Reddit and tried to respond to all of the hate, he made the record for the most downvoted post ever on Reddit. It was terrible. I'll have it up here on screen. EA eventually removed the loot boxes. But even when they did, they announced immediately that they would be adding them back in later. They temporarily removed them to try and improve the game for people, and then just bring them back in later. I've heard that it did help a little bit. I just have no interest. The game had amazing graphics. I would love to play it. I just don't have that kind of money to be dropping on loot boxes. This next one is a huge personal grievance of mine. In 2017, Assassin's Creed Origins released, and it was so bad to play without paying for their time skippers. How the game worked is you had to level up in order to continue through the game. Something that wasn't only a thing in Assassin's Creed. Leveling actually mattered, to the point where if an enemy was just a couple levels above you, they could just about one-hit kill you. Even a single level up was very precious, and later in the game, not so easy to achieve. The game, as I was playing through it, I always felt like I wasn't strong enough. I would get to a point in the story, like every other mission, where I was just entirely way too underleveled. So I'd go back and do all these side quests, and I might be high enough level from doing all the side quests in the area to continue the story. And once I do that, I'm again too low level for the next main mission in the storyline, do more side quests, and I'm still not high enough level. I just have to go around killing random things, finding items, hunting alligators for their skin, because that was actually kind of useful. You're fighting so hard just for this one level up so you can actually continue the story. Then I discovered why. When you went to the Uplay store, they would sell you a permanent experience boost by 50%. 50% experience boost permanently applied to your game. And when I did buy it, because I refuse to not beat an Assassin's Creed game, I've beaten every one released so far, even if the company who makes them is terrible. When I bought it, the game was great. I actually had a lot of fun with it. You could actually play through the story. Yeah, you have to stop once in a while, do some side quests, even if you didn't want to, just to level up a little bit. That's kind of how RPGs work. But it became playable. It was awful. It was a time skip is all it was. The game was designed purposefully to suck without it. The game was designed to take twice as long, to drag you along, to make you do all of these side quests that you might not have any interest in doing, to make you do all of this stuff just to drag out how long the game lasted, just so that way you could, be enticed to pay for their time skips. It was terrible. They continued to do it with Odyssey when that game released. Same thing, experience boosters. Apparently there's going to be a third game in the Assassin's Creed series that's going to be fitting that style. I really hope they cut that out, because I'm tired of paying $60 for a game, and then another $10 or so, I think it was $10, in order to actually be able to play the game. So I'm basically paying $70 for the game. Just charge $70 up front, so that way I know what I'm paying. Don't make me have to drown my way through this game, drag myself around, just to be able to realize, oh crap, I need to buy this for an extra $10. It's stupid. My last example was in 2018. We finally began to see hope in a game that I'm sure all of you are still tired of hearing about, Fortnite. To be fair, I have never played it. I have no interest in it. I've played some Battle Royale games. I've never found one I was super into. Apex Legends was fun for a while. I played it for about a week or two, and then I realized there was nothing really to do. It was just the same thing over and over. Apparently, it's gotten a lot better. Battle Royales aren't for me. Fortnite's just super cringy fan base and their just art style. I'm not into it. Either way, in 2018, they introduced the Battle Pass, which some people still say isn't worth paying for. I can see why. But it's a nice way to move forward with microtransactions. You pay a set amount for this Battle Pass. Then, it rewards you for playing the game. You don't just get everything out of the gate. You don't pay for it and it's all there for you. You have to actually continue playing the game. You have to continue playing these matches in order to get these extra bonus items that you paid for at the Battle Pass. Not only that, you know what you're going to get. You can look ahead on the list and see what is coming up as you progress through your gameplay in the Battle Pass. You know before you buy it what all items you're going to get, when you're going to get them, and what it takes to earn them. It's basically a season-based DLC for bonus content. It's all laid out for you. It's a set price. It rewards gameplay. I might not care for the game myself, but that is the kind of way that microtransactions need to move into. So before we finish up, I want to say something that might not be favorable for a lot of you. I know I'm on the internet and I shouldn't be voicing my opinion, and that's basically all this video is. But games shouldn't cost $60 anymore, and I hate to say it. We're seeing all of this come out, all these microtransactions, all these DLCs, the season passes, paying to play online, paying monthly to play games, paying even more money for a game that you already paid for just so that you can actually enjoy it. They're coming partially because of necessity. Games have progressed dramatically over the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But they've almost always been $60. The $60 price tag for games has been around since the time of the NES and SNES. Now, some games did cost more than that, and quite a few did cost less. It became standardized around the PS3 and, Xbox 360 era that games really started becoming standardized as costing $60. Think about how much it's progressed since then. The PS5 and the new Xbox are releasing within the next year or so, I believe. And look at the graphics and the content of those older games, and look at the ones that we have now. It costs a lot more money to make these games. A lot more staff are involved. A lot more time is put into these, games that still cost $60. I don't want to pay more for my games, obviously. I'm super cheap. I rarely buy games at full price as is. But charging $60 still is what's hurting a lot of these companies. They're having to do some of these. I think a lot of them are awful the way they implement them. They could certainly implement them better. But you can't entirely blame every company for doing it. They have to offset the cost. Their profit margins are going to be lower as time goes on if we continue with the $60 price model. I still think that Nintendo going to $60 for the Switch made sense. Understand with the 3DS, your games were generally costing $30 to $40 for 3DS games. With the Switch, they went up to $60. It's still a handheld. Yeah, you can play it on your TV. You can hook it up to your TV with a dock. It's not as powerful as an Xbox or a PlayStation. It's not supposed to be. It's a handheld, and it's an entertainment console. It's not supposed to be super expensive. I think charging $60 for Switch games makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense is that we're still paying $60 for all these modern games on the Xbox, the PlayStation, and on, PC. As much as I don't want the price to increase personally, it might have to sooner than later, unless you want to keep seeing games being completely ruined by these. I don't want Battlefront 2 to be a bad game. I don't want Shadow of Mordor to be a bad game. All of these games that have these awful practices that completely ruin these games could be fixed if they just increase the price to $70 or $80. Yeah, it's more money than most of us want to spend. but it's what it would take for them to offset the cost of actually producing the game. But I believe that's going to be it for now. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about all of this, especially the last thing I talked about. Again, this is mostly all coming from up here. For all I know, $60 is still earning them plenty of profit, but I certainly don't think it's earning them nearly as much as it used to. Just let me know what you guys think down below. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like. You can subscribe down below, and hopefully I'll see y'all next time. Bye.